When people conquer fear and they find themselves in the streets, as we saw people demonstrating in Dar es Salaam, in Dodoma, in Mwanza, and in Mbeya, and led to deaths, it redefines politics in a different way.
The election day descended into chaos in Tanzania.
Out the Tanzania.
In Tanzania.
As hundreds took to the streets protesting the exclusion of President Samia Suluhu Hassan's two biggest rivals.
In the heart of East Africa, a storm is rising. The land once poised for peace and stability. It is trembling beneath the weight of its own politics. The 2025 Tanzanian elections, held by some, condemned by many, it has left the nation bleeding with questions.
So our message is...
And now, one of Africa's most respected voices, Professor P.L.O Lumumba, has spoken. With words both sharp and sorrowful, he declares,
and that going forward, despite the fact that she has been declared the winner with over 90% of the vote, it is not for her to rest on her laurels and to say that what happened in Tanzania was a storm in a cup of tea. It wasn't.
What has gone wrong in Tanzania? And why is Patrick Lumumba, known for his Pan-African ideals, calling out President Samia Suluhu Hassan directly?
We wish Tanzania well, but we are bold enough and candid enough to tell the Samia Suluhu administration that what happened could have been avoided, and that going forward, despite the fact that she has been declared the winner with over 90% of the vote, it is not for her to rest on her laurels and to say that what happened in Tanzania was a storm in a cup of tea.
On October 29, 2025, Tanzanians went to the polls in an election that has since shaken the country's soul. President Samia Suluhu Hassan was declared the winner with over 97% of the vote, a number so overwhelming that it has sparked disbelief. Opposition parties described the process as neither free nor fair. Internet restrictions, blocked observers, and reports of arrests painted a grim picture. Protests erupted in Dar es Salaam, Arusha, and Zanzibar, with police crackdowns leaving several injured and others dead. Even the African Union observers admitted the polls did not comply with the international standards. For a nation that once embodied calm leadership under Julius Nyerere, this was a new, darker chapter.
Even those who ordinarily would cast their vote, metaphorically speaking, with the Tanzania are now saying that the time is now for that new administration to rethink how they are going to operate. Remember that the leading opposition party has already said they do not recognize the result. Of course, President Samia Suluhu Hassan has already been sworn in as the president. My prayer and the hope of many is that it will not be business as usual, that this is the occasion for her administration to climb down from the high pedestal and to say, we made some mistakes. We presided over an environment that led to the death, unnecessary death of Tanzanians. Let us heal. The only way to heal is to talk about the Tanzania that we want.
But from Nairobi, Professor P.L.O Lumumba broke his silence. In a somber message posted on his foundation's page, Lumumba condemned the unfolding chaos. He says Tanzania is a beacon of hope in East Africa and now trembles under the weight of injustice. Leadership is not a throne of vanity. It is a covenant of trust. Lumumba urged President Samia to engage the opposition, restore civil freedoms, and open dialogue before the nation fractures further. He reminded her that power without legitimacy is tyranny in disguise, and that no African leader can rule in peace while the citizens cry in fear. Lumumba says when the ballot becomes a battlefield, democracy dies in silence.
What has happened is ignored and swept under the carpet. Then the wound will fester and Tanzania will not heal. I hope that will not happen. I would not use the term dictator as defined by the West to describe the actions that she took. I do not know what justified the interruption of social media forum, but I know that in other countries, including Tanzania, which is what happened, that people shut down social media in order to eliminate or reduce the possibility of copycat activities. Because history has demonstrated that sometimes violence is replicated through copycat activities, so that if there are demonstrations in one place, the others say, oh, people are demonstrating and we are not demonstrating. I think that must have been the motivation, well-intentioned. But of course, when things go awry, even the things that are done with the best intentions and the best motives will now be interpreted to mean that you simply don't want to be criticized.
Tanzania's elections reveal a clear pattern of dictatorship. Opposition leaders detained or barred from campaigns, independent journalists silenced, internet throttled, protesters beaten or dispersed by force. To Lumumba, these are not isolated incidents. They are symptoms of a decaying democratic conscience. He calls it the slow suffocation of the African voter. Lumumba has long argued that Africa's tragedy is not the absence of elections, but the presence of manipulated ones. That leaders seek international applause more than domestic trust, and that nations die not from wars, but from the silence of good citizens. Lumumba's message to President Samia Suluhu was therefore direct. He warns Samia Suluhu Hassan that she cannot build peace by barring truth. Reconciliation is not a weakness, it is a wisdom.
And that is the message that is being sent, and you've seen it not only as regards Uganda and Tanzania, but across the continent of Africa. So the message is loud and clear that we young people are thinking about Africa. And the sooner the political leadership realizes that and embraces that message, the safer it is for the continent of Africa.
Lumumba warns that Tanzania's descent is a mirror to the continent. From Uganda's lifetime presidency to Cameroon's rigged polls and Zimbabwe's muted democracy, Africa risks recycling its own mistakes. Lumumba believes that the awakening of informed voters across Africa in Kenya, Senegal, Ghana, and Zambia, it shows that citizens are no longer blind. They are reading constitutions, questioning corruption, and demanding integrity. The age of silent obedience is quickly fading away.
There is some lesson to be drawn that Africa must rethink how we govern ourselves. We must ask ourselves, this constitution that we give ourselves, these systems of governance that we inherited from the colonizer, are they serving us well? We have these political parties which, as experience has shown, continue to divide us along religious lines, along ethnic lines. Is there not a better way of governing ourselves? And one is not saying that we go back to a traditional system, because our societies are not even traditional after Berlin. Can we adopt and adapt and use systems that are going to emphasize the things that unite us rather than the things that disunite us? This is the time.
Tanzania now stands at a crossroad. Will President Samia Suluhu rise as a reconciler or fall as another warning in Africa's history books? Lumumba's words echo beyond borders. He says if we betray democracy today, our children will inherit a continent of chaos tomorrow. The question is not only for Tanzania, it is for every African nation that dares to call itself free. This is the Red Mic.